Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters and viewers of IQRA TV. I hope you've had a good break. I hope you've enjoyed a tea, coffee or sharbat or whatever it is that you enjoy during this time that we go for a break. I hope the first part of the program that we've been talking to Naz Shah, the Member of Parliament for Bradford West, has been interesting and fascinating, and I've certainly learned something from her. But one of the most important things I've been talking to her during the break is, as a Member of Parliament, as a public servant, like many public servants, particularly public servants like Naz, who are MPs who put themselves in front of the public virtually 24/7, they also become victims of trolls and abuse on social media, etc. And she's been telling me she's one of the most abused, possibly, person on social media of the whole group of MPs that we have. I mean, how do you cope with that? Young people are finding it absolutely difficult, if they're trolled or, they're abused, they're vilified, they're criticized. I mean, you must be facing that day in, day out, non-stop. I mean, I don't think I'd be able to cope with it. That's why I'm not on social media. Anybody looking for me on social media, forget it. I'm not on it. I'm too scared to be on it. How do you cope with that?
Well, to be honest, you just don't give it the attention. You just don't. You've got to remember that.
Does it never get to you?
There are times when it does. When you get the threats towards your children, when you get the threats towards some of the worst things that have been said. We wish you see your children dead in your arms, kind of thing, and the rape threats and all the rest of it is quite. The worrying thing for me, Iqbal, is that it's become normal. And it's so normal that it's not shocking, and actually it should be really, really shocking that we have that kind of level of abuse on Twitter.
And I mean, my other role that I am involved with, I won't get into too much detail. Social media companies like Twitter and Facebook and others have been very slow in closing people's accounts who really abuse you. Have you found that as one of the issues that you would like to see change in?
So I used to be a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and we had Twitter, Facebook and Google in a number of times, and YouTube, and they have allowed, and they lost lots of revenue because they allowed extremist content or people directed to extremist content. So if you search for a certain thing and then you automatically get redirected to something which is similar, so it becomes a real vicious cycle. And we have seen a rise in the far right extremism. We've seen a rise with with Islamist extremism. So we've really YouTube and Google were held to account as part of our hate crime inquiry. We've also had the media in as part of a hate crime inquiry in terms of their responsibilities. And if you look at the 1 in 5 jihadis, that story, the Times won the most incorrect headline award at the Byline Festival this weekend, where I was at, and again for their Muslim Christian child forced to be fostered with the Muslim foster parent.
The East London one, yes.
Yeah, that was horrendous. As absolutely horrendous headline. So yes, in terms of abuse on Twitter, you hold people to account. They are changing things, but the truth is, one of my colleagues, I think it was Jess Phillips, who asked for people need to know when you have an account, you need to know that it's a bona fide account, so that you can have checks and balances, as opposed to being able to be abusive, behind an egg. Yeah. If you like, and I think that should be something that Facebook and Google.
They're very slow. I mean, I sit on the government's. I'm the deputy chair of the government's hate crime advisory group, by the way. The government has an official hate crime advisory group, the IAG. I've been the deputy chair for the last 8-9 years. So we've had this debate constantly around how social media empowers the extreme right and those who want to do damage to people, even people who are disabled. We get some really nasty comments about disabled people, and the social media companies seem to be turning a blind eye, just like the Society of Editors. We've been battling the Society of Editors for a long time about the way they use headlines, particularly amongst people who are new to the country. People are asylum seekers, refugees, travellers and gypsies, for example. And this is a constant battle with them. So in terms of security for yourself and your children and your family, obviously after the Joe Cox murder, there was a high sort of tension around all members of Parliament and all people who stand for public office. I mean, in your case, did you have to make many changes to your lifestyle?
Well, I had other threats as well. So I didn't just have the usual far right threats. I also had the threats which were intercepted by the police for threats to shoot me literally weeks after Joe was shot. You know, as I pursued justice for Samia Shahid, who was murdered in Pakistan.
Yes.
So the police call you in and say, where are you going to be this evening, Naz? Oh, I'm off to London to do, you know, Good Morning Britain. Well, we're about to arrest some people because we think people are going to shoot you. You know, it's kind of like you think, okay, and you just kind of like, right. But it's a job, you've got to do it, you know, and you can't be coward. You know, you can't be cowed by threats. You can't be. It's not what we do. It's not what I do, and it's not what we do as British people. We just don't do that. So, you know, we don't cower to terrorism and threats, and we won't cower to you know, people who will stop us from doing the work that we do. You know, because I've got constituents that, you know, I have to serve.
Obviously, the case you just mentioned always happened in Pakistan, and
Yes.
you travel to Pakistan on a regular basis, I'm assuming. You know.
I've been a couple of times.
Right. And do you feel that some of that may follow you over there?
Yes, my risk assessment is done by the security services, and they take care of my, you know, needs, and both here in this country as other MPs, and when travelling abroad, particularly in Pakistan. But yeah, the authorities really do take care of you. But it's part and parcel of a job now.
Right.
Is having that scrutiny, is having that risk wherever you are, you know, out in the constituency or, you know, at home.
I mean, as I say, you know, my hat's off to you. I have total respect for you because, you know, I don't think I'd be able to cope with the trolls. I mean, I can't even, you know, I get WhatsApp messages and I don't have time to even read them. So I'm too lazy, I suppose. I mean, coming back to your role as the, you know, the Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities, what does that mean in real terms? You know, what do you do in that role?
Okay, so Shadow Minister,
Yes.
Shadow Secretary of State is actually Dawn Butler,
Yes.
so I'm the Shadow Minister. And as a Minister, what we do is hold the government to account on its policies. So for example, how it affects women in particular, women and equalities, the equalities agenda. So for example, you talked about the gypsy and travelling communities, and what, you know, the kind of rhetoric out there and how the government responds and how the government doesn't talk enough about it. It's okay to have a nomadic lifestyle, that's absolutely fine. And the inequalities that, you know, that whole narrative of a them and us between communities, and actually supporting the community who choose to live that life, and the government doesn't do that. The government fails that community. So it's about looking at those policies, highlighting them. So one of the areas that I'm going to also be looking at is the pay gap between BME and non-BME staff. So we've had the gender pay gap, and now I think it's time we looked at the other pay gap. One of the things that I do want to talk about is the issue of class, because I really think that's important, because we're not talking about it enough. You cannot get equality if we don't have class equality. You can't expect a nation to be getting race equality, gender equality right if you can't just get the basics right, which is getting people on an equal footing to have the same opportunities, to have an education. And it has to be a very, very multi-pronged approach, because it can't just be education, getting a good education if you're setting people up to fail because we haven't got the issue of equality right, you know. And then there's the issue of women and equality. You know, the Samia Shahid case, you know, in particular, we're very, very, it was a tragic case of a woman who was brutally raped and murdered in Pakistan. And the Chief Constable, the Deputy Chief Constable, attended an event that I hosted with Islamic Relief. So I'm now an ambassador for Islamic Relief's Honour Her campaign, which is about ending honour crimes across the globe. And we had an event on the 20th of July to mark Samia's the second year of her death. And I'm writing to the Chief Justice in Pakistan this week, or next week the letter's going. But again, to make sure that we get justice, and to make sure, and I'm really proud, Iqbal, you know, the people, the businesses that sponsored and showed support to that event. It was some of the biggest businesses in Bradford, including the Regal Group, including the IQRA Group, including the Akbar's groups. You know, we had some solicitors from Waterstones, etc. The Omar Khans, you know, all of these people who you no doubt know were very, very, the Chicanos, you know, there were lots of, I can't even list all of them. And indeed, businesses from across West Yorkshire, Global Components from Dewsbury, from Leeds, they were supportive. And that sent a real clear message that Bradford is behind this campaign. Bradford is not, you know, Bradford will not tolerate, will not have an honour crime in its name, that Bradford stands united against the persecution of women, the violence against women. And that was a real, it was a real proud moment for me as a Bradfordian to have the support from businesses like I did on the 20th of July.
That's excellent. I mean, I know most of those businesses, I virtually know all of them.
Yes,
no
and
doubt. All of these businesses do some amazing work. And actually, that's another point. One of the issues we've been looking at on a national level is that Muslim communities and Muslim businesses, Muslim people, do put a lot back into their community. It's not targeted at just Muslims or Asian people. It's targeted to all the communities. Yet very little of this is in the public eye. So the local media, the press, etc., don't really paint a very good picture of the Muslim community, particularly Muslim businesses, who do put back. I mean, like you say, IQRA, the Akbars, and the Chicanos and everybody else. They do put a lot of back into the community. Yet very little of that is actually emerging in the print media. And how do you think we can change that narrative?
Okay, so I'm also the vice chair of your party parliamentary group on British Muslims, and we had
which was previously the Islamophobia group.
Yes. So what we have is we had a report which we launched at Christmas, and we actually called it a very Merry Christmas, because what we wanted to highlight is whilst the rest of the country is celebrating Christmas, Muslims are stepping up and playing their part. So there are Muslim charities like Penny Appeal, like Human Relief, like there's lots of Muslim Islamic relief that are actually going out there and working with communities who are isolated. And often, and if you look at the zakat that we give, the amount of I think the amount that we give is absolutely phenomenal per head as a Muslim community. But I think what's really, really important is some of it is part of being Muslim, isn't it? So the left hand gives and the right hand doesn't know. There's that humility of giving and that humility of charity. So the point of giving charity and giving zakat and raising that kind of money is not because of the public reward, if you like, but the reward for the hereafter and contributing to your community. And I think that's really, really important. So we don't shout about when we give to charity. We don't shout loudly about it. But I think there's a balance to be struck, that we do say, here we are as British Muslims playing our part as proud Brits. Because there is nothing, when we talk about British values and the microscope that the British community is under, British Muslim community is under, there is no conflict between me being a Muslim and British values. There is zero conflict.
In fact, Islam complements it.
Absolutely. Well, the truth is, if you look at British values, so I was at the Byline Festival and I was interviewing the former Tory chair, Baroness Warsi, on her book. And I put that to her. I said, look, British values, what do you think of it? And actually, British values have changed over the years. British values have changed, not many years ago. They were very, very homophobic. But years before that, they were very sexist. Years before that, they were very, racist. And British values, and those were things that were acceptable in election campaigns. I remember looking at a leaflet, if you want an N-word for your neighbour, vote Labour. Yeah, they were disgusting.
And I'm much older than you. So
if you look at British values, they've evolved over time and they're getting better and better. But actually, my Islamic values have always taught me.
By the same token, I mean, while we know that in terms of social justice, the inclusivity has been increasing, as you say, homophobia, sexism, racism, institutional racism has changed to a certain extent. But over the last 4 or 5 years in particular, since Sayyida Warsi came up with the dinner table test.
Yes, 2011.
We've seen an increase, phenomenal increase in Islamophobia in this country. So while all the other isms, there's been a change, and in terms of Islamophobia, we actually is going in the opposite direction. Right? And that is a real shame. I agree with you. And Islam teaches us the values that, Britain says we hold these values, and those are the values of Islam anyway. So I agree with you. I mean, in the sense of, coming back to what you said about the APPG, I remember appearing in front of the APPG 5, 6 years ago, before it changed. It used to be the APPG on Islamophobia. The number of Muslim MPs who attended that meeting was none in those days, despite the fact we had about 6 Muslim MPs in Parliament from all political parties. Has that changed? Are your Muslim colleagues, the members of Parliament now, engaged in the Islamophobia group or British Muslim group? Because without their engagement, I don't suspect so much change is going to take place.
Okay, so for me, there's a caveat about that, and there's a real challenging question. It isn't about whether Muslims are engaged. The issue is you're pushing against an open door with Muslims. Is it the white non-Muslims or non-Muslims who might not be, perhaps not be white, engaged? And that's more important, because the Muslims are experiencing the issues, but the responsibility is for wider community.
The reason why I point this out, that not all members of parliament, in my view, were signed up to the APPG on Islamophobia. Whether they attend or not is immaterial, but their presence would have been useful. But to me, they were not necessarily signed up to the issue of raising Islamophobia in the way you do. You challenge it and say the Wasi challenges it, right? And maybe Rushanara Ali.
Yes, yeah. I think historically, if we look at Islamophobia, it's much more prevalent now than it ever has been. I mean, it was before my time that you're talking about, because I've only been there 3 years.
Yes. Let me say this to the viewers. Naz was not a member of parliament at that time, so I cannot say she was not engaged. Yeah. But some of my other good friends were members of parliament at that time.
Yeah, I think there is a much more increased engagement, not just from Muslim MPs, but also non-Muslim MPs, which is
they're absolutely vital.
Yes,
they're vital.
Absolutely vital, and I think that's really, really important. The APPG is out to consultation, so we're in Birmingham tomorrow with Shabana Mahmood, Liam Bryan, Baroness Varsi, looking at the definition of Islamophobia. So what we want to have is a working definition which is agreed, a recommendation to the government to adopt from the all-party parliamentary group.
Hasn't Tell Mama come up with one?
I'm not. I think that will feed into.
Right.
I think that will feed into what we are, the all-party parliamentary group, of a cross group of parliamentarians.
Are you thinking of coming up further north?
Sorry?
Are you thinking of coming up further north?
Oh, we've been to Sheffield.
Right.
So in the past, I've had the Home Affairs Select Committee come to Bradford to talk about Prevent. So we are so I'm certainly very, very active around the issues which are affecting the Muslim community. You know, the hate crime inquiry, the hold in the media. You know, we had the Sun in. That, you know, I put it to the Sun about their rhetoric. I had the privilege of being on the committee when we had IPSO in and challenging Sir Alan very, very clearly. As you know, when we talked about the Jewish problem being hate crime, and rightfully so, and yet the Sun can come up with the line, the Muslim problem, and yet it's not seen as hate crime by IPSO. So the disparity there is absolutely shocking. So I've done quite a bit of work on these kind of issues and challenging clear Islamophobes, you know, such as Douglas Murray, such as the Henry Jackson Society, both in the last parliament and since I came back in this parliament, since this general election. So there's lots of work being done, but we still have lots more to do. And the truth is, you know, the Islamophobia, where the MCB have now written to the Conservative Party and they're wanting an inquiry, and I think it's only right that the Muslim community continues to support the MCB in pushing for that inquiry.
I mean, I won't come. The MCB obviously is one of the biggest umbrella organisations in this country. But unfortunately, the MCB is a persona non grata at the moment, as far as the government is concerned. And we've been asking the government to engage with the MCB. And it's regrettable. Do you think if the Labour Party came into power, that the MCB would become one of the organisations that they would come to consult? Because it was the Labour Party that stopped it.
No, so we are really, really clear. So the last MCB's annual celebrations, both Jeremy and I were both present in London at that event. So yes, we're very, very much engaged with the MCB, and I would say I would encourage the current government to get rid of their non-engagement policy and engage with the MCB and engage with MEND. You know, MEND is the largest grassroots organisation that tackles Islamophobia, and we need to be. You can't just hold up one organisation when we have two others which are much larger and much more representative of the Muslim community.
Let me put my cards on the table. You probably don't know this. Until last month, I have been a member of the Anti-Muslim Hate Crime Advisory Group since virtually its inception. And Baroness Varsi obviously set it all up. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been saying to the government that in our role as advisors, we want you to open up the engagement to other Muslim groups as well. Regrettably, they've not been listening to our advice, and they're focused on a couple of, the Quilliam Foundation, for example, Tell Mama, etc. And I would like to see the others come in, because I think they have an equal role to play, if not more. And I remember Iqbal Sakrani, whom I've known for years. He's a fellow Malawian, because I come from Malawi, he does as well. Outside the Home Office, asking me to try and persuade the minister to allow the MCB to come in. And it's a shame that the government has taken this attitude, and I say this openly, and I think it's a very damaging attitude that the government has taken, that not to engage with the MCV and MEND and others, because I think that is counterproductive to everything we're trying to do. I mean, in terms of your role on the APPG, and the APPG means All Party Parliamentary Group, which has members from all political parties.
Absolutely, cross-party.
Right? Yes, so it's all cross-party. And I'm not sure who the chair is at the moment.
It's Anna Soubry.
Because it used to be our colleague from neighbouring constituency, Stuart Andrews.
All right, no, Stuart isn't. So Stuart took a ministerial role.
He chaired it for a little while.
Yes, he did.
You know, when I went there. Friends, I'm really sorry. We've come to the end. I've just had this note saying 30 seconds. We just come to the end. We're having a fascinating debate. There's a lot of issues I wanted to talk to Naz about, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Naz, I'm really, really grateful to you for coming.
No,
I think you're a wonderful, amazing person. You're very brave in what you're doing. I certainly would not be able to do it. May Allah give you even more strength.
Ameen.
And may you serve the community and for the betterment of the Muslim community.
Inshallah.
All power to you. And inshallah, if there's anything we can do, please let me know. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I hope you found Naz equally as fascinating and elusive as I have. So, and inshallah, I'll see you again next week. In the meantime, may Allah take care of you, and may Allah be kind and generous with you. Look after your friends, your neighbors, your family. Inshallah, I'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.